Hey, church family, JT here. We're in Psalm 76 today. It's not a very long psalm, so we're going to read the whole thing and just talk a little bit about it. So let's get after it. You can see here Psalm 76. Who can stand before you? To the choir master with stringed instruments, a psalm of Asaph, a song. In Judah, God is known. His name is great in Israel. His abode has been established in Salem, his dwelling place in Zion. There he broke the flashing arrows, the shield, the sword, and the weapons of war. Selah. Glorious are you, more majestic than the mountains full of prey. The stout-hearted were stripped of their spoil, they sank into sleep. All the men of war were unable to use their hands. At your rebuke, O God of Jacob, both rider and horse lay stunned. But you are to be feared. Who can stand before you when once your anger is roused? From the heavens you uttered judgment, the earth feared and was still, when God arose to establish judgment to save all the humble of the earth. Selah. Surely the wrath of man shall praise you. The remnant of wrath you will put on like a belt. Make your vows to the Lord your God and perform them. Let all around him bring gifts to him who is to be feared, who cuts off the spirit of princes, who is to be feared by the kings of the earth. When you're looking at this psalm, there's a natural break between verses 6 and 7. And it's in this natural break that you can see verses 1 and 6 speak of what God has done, his mighty acts, that in the midst of battle, he's destroyed the enemies of his people. We see this theme throughout the Psalms and many other places in Scripture that the Lord looks after his own. He protects his people. Because of this awesome display of God's power, the psalmist transitions in verse 7 that our reaction to God's power is to fear him. If we're honest, this idea of fearing God is not popular in our current time. While many enjoy talking about God's love, his mercy, his power, and grace, which is important and clearly evident in Scripture, unfortunately, it seems that we often want to dance around the idea of fearing God. However, although we may dance around the topic, the Scriptures do not. They are very clear. Mankind is to fear God. God is mighty, powerful, and has done incredible works. And the psalmist says in verse 7 about God, it says, but you are to be feared. We don't do ourselves any favors when we shy away from this topic. But let me draw our attention to the purpose of God's fear, because this is where the fear of God leads us to understanding God's nature. If you'll notice in verse 9, it shows us that God is to be feared because he uses his awesome power to, quote, save all the humble of the earth. The Lord uses his power to preserve and provide for his people, which are those who are marked by humbleness before him. There's so many directions we could take here, but let me leave you with this simple point. As Christians, we're called to be humble before God. And this only occurs by having a true and real fear of God. Let me close with just a reminder from Psalm 1:7, which was, seems like forever ago, the beginning of the Psalms, that says plainly in verse 7, quote, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction, end quote. If you want to have true knowledge for this life, true and lasting understanding, it begins with a healthy fear of God.